In today's video, we're going to go through how protein can help you lose fat in 2023. So just before we take a deep dive into it, if you're enjoying this type of content, make sure you subscribe and also share with a friend who you think will also gain some value. Now, in 2023, we have more studies than ever about why the macronutrient protein is so important and how it's so important to help you drop body fat. Okay, the first thing is it helps you maintain lean muscle tissue. So when we're in the fat loss phase, our muscle tissue becomes vulnerable. So, I mean, I've seen it 101 bloody times when people drop loads of body fat, they're absolutely buzzing, thinking, right, I'm exactly where I want to be body fat wise, but they've dropped a load of lean muscle tissue as well. So they've got no shape, no curves, and now they feel like, right, I need to go back to where I used to be with muscle. So then they gain loads of muscle, or they try to gain loads of muscle, gain loads of fat, and then they're straight back at square one. And this yo-yo just bounces in and out. So when we have protein, it helps us maintain lean muscle tissue alongside, you know, sleep, resistance training, so on and so forth. But protein is a big factor to help us maintain the muscle. So when we drop the body fat, we keep the muscle, we still have the shapes and curves, so on and so forth. So we actually are satisfied when we drop body fat, thinking I'm exactly where I want to be. And that was the successful dieting phase, as opposed to thinking I've got no shape, no curves, I look like a stick, this isn't where I want to be. Number two, protein is a satiating macronutrient, the most satiating macronutrient. Now, on a dieting phase, you're going to be hungry. I mean, it's kind of the point, right? You're in a deficit, you're depriving your body of nutrients, which means you're going to be a little bit hungry, but we want to limit that hunger as much as possible to make sure you can stay adherent with your diet. Now, there's loads of tips and tricks, you know, when you look at volume of foods, you know, fruit, veg, so on and so forth, but today we're talking about protein. And where protein is so satiating, it can make you feel more satisfied. It keeps you fuller for a longer period of time. Now, because of this, it's ideal to almost spread out your protein throughout the day. So if you can almost have 20-30 odd grams as an example every couple of hours, it's going to be, you know, optimal. Now, I know this isn't key for everyone. I know people that might work different hours, it might be tough to do, but there's things in theory and things in practice. In theory, it's great. In practice, it might be a bit more difficult. So you want to do what you can here. Then you might use something like a whey protein shake for convenience on times that you might have a longer window where you can't get food in. Now, don't get me wrong, sometimes we have hunger waves and we can ride a hunger wave and that hunger can go, but sometimes you're just hungry, right? So when we're looking at protein, if you can spread it out throughout that day, that's optimal, because not only that, when we look at hitting protein, our body, again, dependent on your weight and your height, can only really synthesize 30 to 40 grams of protein per sitting, roughly dependent on you know, your weight and size and height. But if we're looking at that and we deprive ourselves of protein all day and go, oh, I'm low on protein, I'll have 80 grams of bloody protein for dinner with chicken, steak and beef, it's just not going to be optimal because you're not going to be intaking all of that as well. So number two is making sure from a protein perspective, we're satisfied nutritionally when we're dieting, so we feel fuller for longer, we're not starving, and therefore we can stay more adherent to our diet. Number three is the thermic effect of protein. Now, when we look at protein, we burn about 20 to 30% through digestion. So let's say, for instance, we had 100 grams of protein or 100 calories of protein, right? We're going to burn 20 to 30 calories through digestion. Then you got carbs at about roughly 10 to 15% and fats at 0 to 5. So it's got the highest thermic effect out of all the macronutrients. So the more protein we have, the more calories we burn through digestion, which effectively means we can almost maintain a deficit a hell of a lot easier. And last but not least, number four is recovery. Now, if you're coming to the gym every time, feel like you've been hit by a bus, you're going to find your frequency of training is going to go down. You're going to need more rest days because your body feels all over the gaff. Then number two is your intensity of training. So if you do go to the gym and you feel like you've been hit by a bus, you're not going to be able to work as hard, which means you're not going to pull out much potential when you're training. So protein is the most important macronutrient when it comes to repairing and growing muscle tissue, because in the fat loss phase, if you're somewhat of an inexperienced lifter, or you're completely dramatically changing your intensity of training, or you know, it's your first time lifting, you can gain muscle tissue. Experienced lifters, probably not. But when you're in a fat loss phase, it can be done. But then protein is the absolute key to give yourself half a chance to do this. So we can grow and repair muscle tissue, but most importantly, again, when we look at almost training hard and training smart, training hard is I'm just going to go in there, I'm going to work really hard and I'm going to leave and I'm not going to prepare properly, but my work ethic with me and I work just as hard the next session. As a human being, there's only so much you can do when you've got DOMS. So DOMS is delayed onset muscle soreness. So this is that pain you feel, you know, where after a leg day and you can't sit on the toilet seat. That's DOMS, right? So if we can reduce DOMS every gym session we go into, we feel fresh, we feel good, we're ready to crush it. That's going to pull out the maximum potential out of that workout. So then number 4 is making sure recovery is in a good place through having enough protein, which means the training, the intensity and frequency can stay in a good place. Next question is probably how much, right? How much protein should I have? So generically for a female, it could be 0.8 to 1 gram per pound of body weight. And for a male, maybe 1 to 1.2 grams per pound of body weight. Again, these are generic numbers. I don't know you, I don't know who's watching this right now, which means, you know, generic is just going to give you a bit of a ballpark for what you can then go away and implement. But if you want more specific and you actually want me to break down the numbers specifically of what you can have, feel free to just comment protein. I'm more than happy to ask you a few questions to break that down for you. And then taking that into a bonus tip, if you will, is having a whey protein shake. So think a little bit like this. So all this is now going to do is it's going to make protein a lot more convenient to hit. So generally in your day, especially if you're kind of almost, if you would, a career-driven professional where, you know, you might work corporate, you might work long hours, and sometimes, you know, when we look at theory and practice, things that are great in theory where you'd have protein split up with whole foods every couple of hours, in practice it don't work like that. So this can just be a convenient way to get protein in. But also there's something called a bioavailability. So what this means is with protein, we take 100% of the protein straight into the bloodstream, where if you look like a, I don't know, like a 20 grams of protein chicken breast, you're probably only going to uptake around or synthesize around 14 to 17 grams. So this is great for getting protein in. I would probably say limit to 1 a day, just purely because when you're dieting, you want to feel satisfied. So actually eating food. If you're just having all of your protein through liquid, or if you're having all your calories through liquid, you're not going to feel satisfied and you're going to feel more hungry, because a lot of it is mind games when we look at dieting, right? You know, having more volume on a smaller plate and make you feel more satisfied than a huge plate with you know, a small amount of food. If I was to give you 100 grams of strawberries, a massive basket, and I was going to give you a small handful of nuts, probably feel more satisfied over 30 minutes eating the strawberries and over 5 seconds eating the nuts, right? Same thing. So that's why we want to try and limit it to 1 a day, but these are great for convenience and they're great for actually getting protein in as well. So bonus tip, whey protein shake. That is how you can utilize protein for fat loss in 2023. Again, if you like this type of content and you find it helpful, please subscribe and share with a friend. But in the meantime, thanks for watching and we'll see you in the next episode.